got some advice. Don't get in a mud fight with a pig. You ever heard that? I grew up with a man who was raised in East Texas, a tomato farmer, grew up during the Depression. He's the one that trained me, as Jared was talking about in Bible class. And I've got a whole litany of various sayings, but that's one that he told me at times whenever I would get a little bit upset about the way people treated me or things they did. And he said, son, don't get in a mud fight with a pig. I had no idea what he meant for a while, and then I finally figured it out. Because sometimes I did that very thing, and I found out it didn't accomplish anything. But you know, as Christians, we realize that whenever we go through life, there are going to be pig fights going on. And they're going to try and draw you into those things. Just a little bit ago, really fit in with this lesson, a young lady, and it's actually Amanda. And you can look at her t-shirt, and it says, let them. I looked at that, and I said, what does that mean? Well, then she turned around. I encourage you to read her t-shirt. But it talked about the things that people do to one another. The gossip, the things they say, trying to tear you down to their level. And what you have to do is decide, I'm not going to be drawn into a pig fight. That mud fight with a pig will never work out. But the truth is, the world is filled, and sometimes even within the church, there will be people who say things that simply are not true. They're harmful, they're hurtful, they're not meant to be beneficial. Nobody is concerned about receiving just criticism. I have been the object of that many times, and well deserved, that I needed to be corrected. But there are times whenever people say things that just absolutely untrue. Whenever I first moved up here, I used to get letters. It got to the point whenever I got a letter, if it didn't have an address on the outside, I'd open it up, see if it's signed. If it wasn't, I'd throw it away. Didn't even want to know what they said. But the Bible speaks about the fact that we react in a certain way. I can't control what other people do, but I can control what I do. In 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, and this is really in accord with her shirt, just let them. But don't be part of them. 1 Peter 2 and verse 11, he says, Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from the fleshly lusts which war against the soul, having your conversation honest amongst the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may be by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Our goal is to transform them. They're going to see things, they're going to say things, and it's not true. And they'll look, and your reaction is going to be gauged in such a way that, number one, I'm not going to succumb to their type of actions, but hopefully my reaction or lack of a reaction that they like is going to cause them to look and see the type of life that I am living and hopefully turn unto God. 1 Peter 3:15 has that same aspect, that you sanctify in your hearts Christ as Lord. You're ready to give answer for the hope that's in you. Sometimes they don't look at it as hope. They look at it as you doing something terrible in their mind. But you give them a Bible answer in your life, in your word. He goes on and he says in chapter 3 in verse 15 through 16, he says, Now this is the will of God, that with well-doing you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as the servants of God. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. You look at that and he says, here's what you do. You keep on living that godly life. You don't let them get you down into their fight. The book of Romans, the 1st chapter, tells us that such people as that, they not only do those things, but they want you to be like them. God says, I want you to be different. I want you to live soberly and righteously and godly in this life. And in doing that, you make a difference, of course, with the life you have with God, but also the life that is with other people. You hopefully make a difference in their life, and you'll make a difference in society, because there's going to be this light that shines in this world of darkness. In verse 9 of 1 Peter 3, he says, Not rendering evil for evil, railing for railing, but contrariwise blessing, knowing that thereunto you are called, that you should inherit a blessing. You know, oftentimes I have people ask, how you doing? I say, top of the world. I say, I don't care what they say, I'm not going to move. Well, that's a little saying that I've got to where I say a lot of times, but actually it is part of my life. It ought to be the part of every child of God's life. Don't render evil for evil, railing for railings. Don't get in a mud fight with a pig. Rise above it. Soar up on wings of eagles. Let your light shine that men may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. The devil rejoices whenever I have reacted in the wrong way. Whenever I've gotten down and got into the mudslinging contest, the devil just sits back and grins and says, I love this. But God says, I don't. But whenever we stand up, clean away the mud, stand as a servant of His, the Lord rejoices in us, because that's who we're supposed to be. So we live in this world. We're not of the world. Jared said his next class is going to be talking about the fact that sadly we can't go out of this world, so we have to teach people how to work and live in this world in spite of what the world does. And that's what every one of us has to do. It's not easy, but as he said, there as Peter spoke, we do it because we're going to inherit a blessing. That's what's important in our life. That's the focus we have. So what about you and I? First of all, I need to know that God has given me the ability to be transformed, that I can rise above that. I once lived with the pigs, in essence. I was in sin. But he says, child of God, the Apostle Paul, he, in speaking of his conversion, he said he was baptized to wash away his sins. I love that phrase, because I've been dirty physically, I've been dirty spiritually. God says you wash that away. But then you rise to walk in the newness of life. And don't let anybody pull you from it. Rise above it. We have that ability to do it. Sometimes we need a little help in doing that. I've asked for help time to time, for people to help me, strengthen me as I face their struggles. Maybe you need to do that. But whatever it is, let's be who we ought to be because of who made us that way. If we can help you to do that, let's do it as we stand and sing.